Thank you and welcome to our Deadly Fringe First Nations Bodies in Colonial Spaces conversation. And before I go any further, I want to acknowledge the Yalukit Willam as the traditional owners of country on this beautiful country that we're meeting in today and pay our respects to Bunurong people's ancestors and elders as ongoing custodians of country. I also want to say happy NAIDOC to these gorgeous guests and to any mob listening and to you and your country, community and elders. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge NAIDOC and our NAIDOC history and that it's always a bittersweet event. It's not just about celebrating, it's about commemorating and acknowledge with respect the history and origins of the very first day of mourning, how this began as we meet in NAIDOC Week and think about the beginnings of it and the old people that met and took the great risk to themselves to meet in Sydney on the 26th of January 1938 at the very first day of mourning. And they were acknowledging and fighting for our rights, and they were fighting for the acknowledgement of the traumas, losses and genocide of our people across the nation. So though it is a week of celebrations and celebrating our resistance, it's always remembering how it began. So I am very honoured to be here with you, Maddie and Rosie, and little Miss Yindi over there, doing their very first public appearance at panel at 11 months. Is that right, Maddie? Yep. Very impressive. My name is Paola Balla and I am a Wemba Wemba and Gunditjmara woman. I'm a sovereign woman, a Koori woman, and really proud to be hosting this yarn with you both. In this unusual and different, unique NAIDOC Week. It's different for us because we'd usually be out with mobs of people and not in November, but back in June when it couldn't happen. So I do feel grateful that we're able to be here in person as we slowly move out of this very long lockdown here in this city and particularly on Yalukit Willam country. And we are presented by Melbourne Fringe in partnership with MPavilion, so thank you. Congratulations to both of you on your beautiful exhibitions in Deadly Fringe and for being the 2020 recipients of the Fringe Deadly Visual Arts Commissions for 2020. Well done. Maddie, congrats on your very first exhibition, and Rosie, I understand that your exhibition's been listed as one of the top 5 to see this week. Is that right? Where did that appear? On somewhere? So I'll just introduce you a little bit better. Maddie, you're a Yorta Yorta, Judjurrung and Gimilaroi woman, born and raised in beautiful Shepparton. You're an artist. You have your very own art business, Yali Creative, which features beautifully on Instagram and has got an impressive following. And you have 2 babies, one of which is with us, Yindi and Marley. Marley's 4 and Yindi's 11 months. And your show is Healing Through Buliana. Is that right, the pronunciation? Which is pregnancy in Yorta language. And it will be an online exhibition depicting pregnancy through the eyes of an Aboriginal mother. And this is art that evokes a connection and conversation. And Healing Through Buliana will also appear or is supported by Black Dot Gallery. Is that right? And Rosie is a Wemba Wemba and Gunditjmara woman and visual artist who specialises in makeup artistry with also very impressive large Instagram following at Rosie Kalina, and works as a curator who challenges the notion of what it means to be Aboriginal through fierce and decolonial imagery and asserting herself as a sovereign woman. Rosie and I are also related, as many of us in community are. She's actually my daughter, so I'm really proud to be doing this. It's one of the first times we've ever done this, so I'm really honoured and excited. And your Fringe show is Us, a series of self-portraits taken during lockdown exploring the relationship of First Nations women and non-binary people and the relationship they have with their bodies in light of experiencing misogyny, and features contributions from the very incredible Kayit and Tarneen Onus Williams. And it appears with bus projects. Is that right? So thank you both for letting me host this yarn with you. I know it's been a really difficult year, and I do want to acknowledge to our communities and the impact it's had and also especially the incredible efforts of Aboriginal health organisations and communities to keep us safe, and the early intervention they took way before any white Australian government organisations did, and our community's been kept relatively safe during this terrible time. And we do acknowledge the trauma suffered by others, and particularly non-Indigenous elders who've been lost to the community in this state. As well as acknowledging traumas, we want to acknowledge how and how we're impacted as Indigenous sovereign bodies in colonial space. But we're also going to talk about thriving, resistance, black beauty and joy, and honesty and unconditional love, because it's something I see in both of your works and the way you express yourselves, particularly on Instagram. And so we're going to yarn about your art exhibitions in Deadly Fringe and body sovereignty, art and digital spaces, surviving the lockdown, making art under pressure, all those things, and the incredible digital revolution that blackfellas are leading online, particularly on Instagram. Facebook's another story with community. It's a whole other story. It's a whole other place, isn't it? A lot of things play out on there. It's like a virtual mission, virtual town community. But I'm really curious about your Instagram accounts and how you manage that. So Maddie, I might start with you if that's all right. Just about your amazing account and like what it means for you as an Aboriginal woman in that space.
Yeah, so I only launched Yali Creative in our first ISO. So before that I was creating art, and I have been for many years. But Yali Creative as an Instagram platform I launched in March.
In March this year?
Yes.
During everything?
Yes.
During COVID and the...
So I started off with 100 followers and now I'm at 15, almost 16,000.
Amazing.
Within the last couple of months, it's been pretty crazy, especially being at home with my little one. So I'm actually on maternity leave at the moment, and it's been a whirlwind. I wanted something else to focus on. I wanted something positive to focus on while we were in this lockdown space or while we were at home. And obviously I am a mum, but I have suffered with postnatal anxiety and depression. And so I needed something to focus my energy on that was positive other than being a mum. I needed something to be busy, to be doing, to be engaging with people because I'm a very social person. So I just started to really throw myself into the space and started creating more. People started to engage with my content, engage with my art and engage with my story. I'm very vulnerable on Instagram and I share my story very openly. So I think that has connected with a lot of people.
That's amazing. So apart from being a career woman and mum, you just thought you'd chuck up an Instagram account and be very vulnerable and brave and share your art and everything else. It's amazing. That's huge. So did you find that focus helped you get through what has been, I think that something we'll only really understand in another year or two, the full impact of this. Did it really help you get through?
Yeah, so I've connected with so many beautiful people, both Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander and non-Aboriginal. And I feel like the space is really positive. People are connecting with me and they're enjoying what I've got to offer, I guess. And in that, I'm being honest, I'm being transparent and I'm being true. Not only am I an artist, but I'm a mother, I'm an Aboriginal woman, and I've got my business now with Yali Creative, selling art, selling merch, and that's all been built on social media, which has been really fun. Like, I've really enjoyed connecting that way. And I think through this whole situation, for me, it's been really positive because I've been able to focus that energy somewhere else.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. And I really admire that sense of, sharing vulnerability, because I think it's a strength in itself, even when it does make you feel, I know with myself when I'm vulnerable in public spaces and on social media that sometimes I get regret after, but then it sort of passes that worrisome feeling and then you realise the impact when you do get those messages and people telling you the impact that it's had. So that's amazing.
I've even had some people inbox me and they said that they've really enjoyed that I get on live.
Yeah. I think that you realise the the risk taking pays off. You know, it pays off in that it sort of moves people in some other way. And I think people that have done that have always sort of inspired me to be able to share my story. Rosie, can you please tell us about your incredible Instagram account and just how long it's been around? Because I know it's been around for a little while now. And what it means for you as an Aboriginal woman in that space. And over that time, I know you've developed quite an international following as well as a big local one. How has this year impacted on that for you, and has that been a positive space for you as well?
I've been on Instagram for 5 years now. Well, the makeup account that I have, it's been there for 5 years. I've had, my original Instagram since I was in my teens. So I've just always loved social media and how I can express myself in that way and connect with others. And I think, it was 5 years ago when I started my makeup Instagram, and it was when I was at makeup school. I was fresh out of that and high school as well, about a year out. And it was a way for me to, almost like an incentive for me to practice what I was doing. And it slowly really started to build. And like you were saying before, it was like out of nowhere, in maybe the first year or so, I had about 30,000 followers. And it was really bizarre because it was kind of isolating in the sense that I didn't see any other Aboriginal content creators when I was coming up. And I wanted to see that, and I wanted for us to kind of band together and have that representation. But I found myself kind of educating the audience on who we are and our existence as people. Every NAIDOC week, for instance, or every Invasion Day, I would post up and say, this is what this is, as opposed to being able to actually address that to mob. And so, but that's actually changed a lot this year. So with the rising voices, just internationally, especially during, the time of Black Lives Matter movement, making a really huge impact. But specifically here, I feel like a lot of brands are actually pulling their heads in and thinking, this is what we're meant to be doing. We're meant to be including Aboriginal people here, and we're meant to, acknowledge and actually start paying them and, recognising that we contribute so much. And every day I'm finding more and more Aboriginal content creators who have huge followings and who are actually being appreciated now and being seen. So this year's definitely, it's been a lot of opportunity. I was interviewed in Vogue on a roundtable discussion around representation, and that was mind blowing. And I'm so proud of that moment, and that's really because of my Instagram. So, and because of the people before me and the people who are doing a lot of hard work right now, and amplifying our voices.
Yeah, thank you. That's some very big things happened this year with Vogue and Marie Claire in representing finally and interviewing directly and really seeing the most exposure and coverage and direct interviews that we've ever seen, which has been amazing for so many Aboriginal people in this country. And especially for both of you working across, beauty and art, I guess, and that self-expression, the way it all crosses over has been really fantastic, because I guess the areas that we've felt excluded from, growing up, we didn't see ourselves in those fields. And like you said, this is very new to see our representation in beauty and in retail, to see Aboriginal designs on products that we, our friends and relatives are designing, to be able to purchase them changes the way you interact with these things, because like it or not, we have to interact with capitalism, even though it's evil. I can see you all subverting it and making it more ethical and making it more relatable to community. Maddie, telling your own stories, as you mentioned before, that sharing of stories, and I'm not expecting you to go into any great detail now, but just controlling your own narrative and deciding how and when you do talk about things that are vulnerable, that comes through really strongly through your work and what you're saying, especially in relation to Aboriginal women's body and their strength. And I noticed that you use really vibrant colours in your works. I know your fringe works are a secret till you launch them, till you're ready to. But can you sort of talk to that a little bit about the strength of story and your own taking control of your own narrative?
Yeah, so with my art, I want to create something that will evoke a connection and a conversation, but also something that it just speaks to you. So a lot of my stuff is around womanhood, and especially since having my children, I've connected more with my body. And before that, I wasn't as connected. I felt not confident in who I was. I think it wasn't until, I had my son, but then also my daughter, that I started to really understand our powerful bodies and what we can create. And some of the stories that I talk about through the artwork is actually, women aren't seen as they should be. I think, we should put women on a pedestal because we carry children. We have these amazing opportunities to carry children if we can, of course. And I can talk to, I've got endometriosis, so I've always had that from doctors and GPs that you might not be able to have kids, but I was very lucky to be able to have my 2 babies. Both surprised me, but a great surprise. And I just think that, my art is a way for me to connect with people and tell my story through that, to be able to find my confidence in who I am and also in my body as well. So it's as much about society as it is about myself, and it's about wanting to share that with my future kids to show them that they are able. I've got a son and a daughter, and I want to show them that whatever their body, whoever they are able, and they can do things with them, put their mind to it. That's what I want to show, the confidence, our inner confidence that we have.
That's beautiful. For me, I sort of see a similarity in both your expressions, even though they're different. There's a similarity in the pride and about body sovereignty, I think, as well. And as you're saying, like for Aboriginal women, our bodies have been very controlled by the state and by policies, and the medicalisation of birthing rights and things like that are incredibly important. And there's a lot of Aboriginal women and midwives and nurses trying to reassert our sovereignty in these spaces. So it's really important work. Rosie, for you, that idea about controlling narrative as well and story and body sovereignty, that comes through really strongly in your account and the incredible looks that you do. But I know your work's not just limited to your makeup artistry, that it cuts across curating and visual arts practice. But what does it mean to you to have that space to tell your story and control that narrative?
So I think you touched on it a bit before. We haven't really ever seen our stories told or seen ourselves on TV or in film. And, we're kind of invisible to mainstream white Australian television and, talk show hosts and all that. It's constantly hearing us being talked about, but not by us. And I find that as toxic as social media can be, with censorship, however, it still is a platform where we're able to post what we want and we can get, whatever following we can get because it's a public platform. And social media, like you said before, with Facebook, it's, there's the biggest mob on there, like, always posting and making groups and connecting that way and staying so connected. And we've shown just how we utilize it so beautifully. And so on social media, and Instagram specifically, for me, it's like showcasing our beauty, our talents, but not defined by anybody else, not controlled by anybody else, obviously aside from the censorship that can occur. But generally, we post what we want. And the other thing is that I think what's so beautiful about our community is that we really do support each other and lift each other up. With businesses, it's like as soon as something new comes around, people just want to support and we'll spend money. And we'll spend more money than white fellas that have more money than us, Which
We're loyal, hey, with black dollars. Like we're actually quite
yeah.
more sporting.
Hey, yeah. I forgot today. Usually am though. So yeah, I think it's really important, and specifically within body sovereignty and autonomy, that we can actually post up in an angle that actually makes us feel comfortable. And it's a double-sided coin in that way, because a lot of people will say, oh, it's all lies on Instagram, and because it's very curated. However, I actually think it's a beautiful and powerful thing that you get the choice to say, well, I don't want you to see me at my worst. Actually, it makes me feel good to show me at my best. And obviously there are issues with comparing yourself to something that doesn't necessarily exist, and Photoshop and celebrities and all of that. But I think it's actually very powerful to be able to see yourself in your own light, and actually express yourself in the way that you want to be seen. And I think that's something very unique that social media and taking photos of yourself has.
Yeah, it's something that's really blown me away. Like being of an, bit of an older generation, still a youngish person when I think about the cultural sense that I am. If I get around our elders, I'm still a girl. I still make them tea and get them what they need and look after them. But in a Western sense, being 46, you're still generally young in one way and you're invisible in another. And I think to see the self-pride that young Aboriginal people are carrying themselves with, and that self-curation and self-presentation, it really demonstrates how important self-representation is, and that we're also very diverse people, and it's really challenging that there is not one way of being a blackfella. And there's so much racism in this country and so many definitions about who we are and who we're meant to be, who we were, who we can never be, that it's inspiring without sounding cheesy. It really is. It gives me, and I know it gives other aunties and grandparents and community members a lot of pride in what you do and the way you hold that space. And to see the takeover of a space like Instagram by young blackfellas it's a beautiful thing. I think it's really radical. Maddie, in relation to your fringe work and your deadly fringe work, do you want to talk a little bit about the type of works you did and how you had to grapple with it changing with the whole, pandemic happening, the plans that you had beforehand and how you had to adjust to still make this happen?
So I am a painter, so I paint acrylic on canvas. And I think the challenges for me was probably it's harder to see the textiles of the actual paint itself. And I have got a really great photographer to be able to translate that onto the digital platform. But it's still, for me, I was upset because it's my first exhibition, and I was upset that I couldn't have, a party and a gathering and people can come and talk to me and face to face. As I said before, I'm a social person. I really love having a yarn with people and meeting new people. But then again, I was thinking about it and I was thinking, well, this gives people who are following me on Instagram in particular the opportunity to see my exhibition when they probably couldn't. So if I've got international followers, or if I've got interstate followers, at least they can click on the link and have a look and, learn about my art and my journey. And for, my original ideas was I wanted to have a soundscape where people came in and they could feel that they were on country. But now I'm having to recreate that in the digital space. So when you go on to my exhibition, I still want that feeling, and I still want people to feel like they're outside. And when they're looking at my pieces, I want them to be encapsulated within that story and also the piece itself. So I guess in both ways, there's pros and cons, because more people can probably see it, but you don't get that real life experience. But then I'm trying to recreate that as much as I can through the online space as well, which it has been really challenging given the circumstances, but I guess we're just rolling with the punches at the moment. And I've just used really vibrant colours. My stories are really evoking, descriptive, and tell the story of what I was thinking when I was creating. I have got a couple of digital pieces thrown in there as well because I'm a digital artist as well. So I do digital work. So I'm both acrylic on canvas and digital. So that's sort of a little bit of a difference in there, which is I'm really excited to share it all with everyone.
That's wonderful. And your focus is quite clear with those particular works. And you were mentioning the change to your art and your art practice since motherhood. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so before I was a mum, I used to paint. I still painted Aboriginal art, but in a different way. I was painting about my journey and about me, and I was painting more about other people as well along my journey, whereas now it's sort of shifted. It shifted when I was pregnant. I started to use really bold reds with my son, and I started to use different colours that I didn't used to use. And then once I had him, I started to turn towards digital because I had to move into my mother-in-law and my father-in-law's for a little bit once we had my son. And so I didn't have the space to create art. So I didn't have the space to actually get the physical art space working. So then I had to learn how to do things digitally, which opened my world up. Like, it just blew it out of this world because, like, I was able to do things that I wasn't able to before. And then, my son wasn't, trying to get in and mess it up, and I wasn't in anyone's space, or I could just sit there with my iPad. And so then I've started to deep dive into that, and I've done, pieces for Cancer Council Victoria. I helped with their women's business for their pap smears. So as I said before, I've got endometriosis. So through my own journey, I have been going through the women's space where I've created art for Women's Health Victoria and Cancer Council and some other organisations. So the digital stuff's really great because it's adaptable. But then I really love the physical textile stuff when you're creating art. So then once I had my son and he started to grow up, I was doing more animals. So I was doing native animals, which all the kids love and even the adults love. They're so beautiful. And then I started to move towards more, when I got pregnant with my daughter, started to move towards more pregnant bodies, and then her birth was really healing. So my son's birth, it was quite traumatic, and I was, lots of interventions. But with my daughter, I didn't have an epidural, which was my choice, and I was able to birth how I wanted to birth. I connected with my body. Every contraction that I was having, I imagined I was riding a wave that was going to bring me closer to my daughter. And so I guess my exhibition is showing that. It's showing my endometriosis, showing my challenging birth, showing the challenge we have as Aboriginal women in the medical system, and also showing that our bodies they're not our bodies when we're pregnant. So I just want to show, but I want to show it in a positive light because you're holding space for someone else, and that's your baby.
That's beautiful. It's such courageous work, especially for your first show. You just dove right in there. I love it. It's beautiful. Thank you for that. Rosie, in relation to your show, sort of moving to the body again, but in a different way, it explores First Nations women and non-binary people, especially in light of experiencing misogyny. And you wrote for your description about our experiences being policed, scrutinised and fetishised, and that racism, fat phobia and slut shaming have deep impacts on the body and spirit. And yet we see many First Nations peoples utilise these platforms to self-express in these powerful ways. So can you talk a little bit to that, because I'm so fascinated by that, and how you managed to also get through this time of shifting your show to completely remote, and how you managed to curate other artists to contribute as well?
With looking at body positivity or actually fat liberation, that's where it began. And I was also looking at how it's been co-opted, especially by, I guess, smaller bodies and white women, especially on social media. And for me, I really started to re-look at the diet industry, at fat phobia, and realizing how entrenched it is in society. And it goes across so many intersections, obviously, like, you know, being a woman, being Aboriginal, and being considered, you know, fat or plus sized. You know, it's just like layers upon layers. And it's something that I've had to do a lot of unlearning, you know, after years of just constantly, you know, feeling like I was too big and just constantly scrutinizing myself and seeing other people scrutinize themselves. And once I started to unpack my internalized fat phobia and looking at fat phobia everywhere, it was like, whoa, like I just realized that in almost every conversation I was having with my titters, it would be around like, oh, I feel fat, you know, that kind of thing. And it just made me sorry because, you know, for so long I felt like that too. And I'm not going to lie, like I have my days that still exist, but I really started to look at what makes us feel that way, what makes us talk about ourselves that way. And it's capitalism, it's colonialism, and it's kind of created a fixation on shaping and flattening and, you know, contorting our bodies, as opposed to actually giving birth and having saggy titties if you got saggy titties, like, you know, because you're breastfeeding or you're going through puberty or, you know, for whatever reason that is, it's a process and our bodies are ever changing. And so it's taken me a long time and a bit of a journey, if you will, to get to the point where I am now. And it's not easy to confront it because so many people are still in that mindset, which is okay. I don't judge people. But, you know, talking about diets constantly and just constantly talking, it's so much fear of being fat and of fat people. And, you know, it's a huge issue. And so with that, I, you know, kind of stopped pretending that I wasn't a size 8 anymore. And like, was like, you know what, stuff it. So, you know, on Instagram as well, I started posting, you know, photos of my body and in different outfits that I usually would be too scared to wear, and just embracing myself. And then I just noticed how many people messaged me saying, oh my goodness, thank you so much for this. You know, you've really emboldened me. You've given me the tools on how to actually like talk about my body and I see myself differently. And, you know, I've got a similar body shape to you and I see you and you look beautiful, so I feel beautiful. You know, it's that kind of thing. And there's such a lack of representation. And I began modeling as well a couple of years ago and, you know, I've done runway and, you know, I just wouldn't have ever thought that I would do that because when I was at my smallest, I thought I was huge, but now I'm at my heaviest. I'm getting more modeling work than I ever did, you know? So it's interesting because it's like you're made to come into yourself, into your own. And with that, so with the exhibition, I wanted that to reflect that. And so I reached out to Kayit and Tyneen, who are both amazing people, and Kayit's an amazing musician. Tyneen is a beautiful, you know, organizer and activator and, you know, community person and worker and just deadly all round, both of them. So, you know, and they both talk back to fat phobia quite a bit and post up beautiful photos of themselves on Instagram and have a platform. And I just said to them both, I really want you to, you know, I want to take photos of you. But, you know, as opposed to getting my SLR out and going to their houses, like I wanted to, and you know, it's actually a kind of a continuation of a series where I did Kalina Yayans, which means Sisters to Love, where I've done that before. I've taken photos of my titters before and, you know, adorned them with, you know, bush flowers and satin. But this time, you know, I was forced to then come up with a different idea. And I thought, you know what? I've been, you know, really feeling myself and taking photos of myself in my bedroom. I'd love for them to do that in a kind of curated way and over FaceTime, like a FaceTime photo shoot with that concept. And so I reached out to them both and had a good yarn. And yeah, Kayit and I did our makeup together and had a really good yarn. And we were just like, you know, listening to the tunes and it was a really beautiful experience because it was like adapting to this new normal, I guess. And yeah, and I said to them both, you know, be yourself and express your identity this way. So I got them to take, you know, self-timer photos of them, just how they feel the most comfortable. And I took photos of myself as well, got dolled up because, yeah, and it just felt really natural and it felt fun to do, and really all over it's about how we express ourselves and the power of a selfie, you know. And women get so ridiculed, you know, for taking selfies or for being vain or whatever, but when you think about for hundreds of years our bodies have been policed and controlled and being told that we're ugly or not desirable and all of that, you know, it makes sense that if we have the tools in front of us to take photos of ourselves in the light that we want it in, then I think that's really powerful and really deadly, and it's something that should be encouraged and not ridiculed or be you know, looked down upon. So yeah, I'm really proud of how the photos have come out, and I'm very excited to share them.
Beautiful. I am so excited to see these works. Both of your works too and your responses remind me a lot about the concept of unconditional love, which is something I've been thinking about more and more in my own work. I was very fortunate during my PhD which was a practice-led project where I really focused on my matriarch stories and many and some of the things that you're talking about. And one of the women that guided me through it is Auntie Professor Tracy Bunda, who's a phenomenal Aboriginal scholar. And she kept talking to me about saying, during this process, your creative work and your academic work, you need to find places of unconditional love. And I kept repeating it to myself. And I wrote it on a piece of paper, pinned it on my office/studio wall. And in my final exhibition, I tried to actually create a space that would hold that concept. And I see in your works and what you're saying, I really feel what Auntie Tracy was teaching me about, a sense of unconditional love for your body, for yourselves, for your spirit, and that sense of forgiving ourselves too for not being perfect, for the damage that all these Western notions and, like you said, the policing and the violence on Aboriginal bodies that's happened. So I think to sort of finish off, or one of our last questions to sort of meander off on, I'd like you both to just speak to the idea of unconditional love and how you understand that, or whether you want to or not, and how you think it plays out in what you do.
I think I really learnt unconditional love after the birth of Yindi. And I have had another birth, but that was a traumatic birth. And I wasn't as open, I wasn't as vulnerable because it was my first. It was my first birth, my first experience, letting go of who I was, letting go of my body, letting it do its thing, letting it be what it needed to be in that moment. Whereas when I was birthing Yindi, I was fully naked, I was fully with myself, I was fully believing in my body, believing in my ability to birth. And it was crazy. Like, I just found that in that moment, and then the moment after I gave birth to her, I've got an amazing photo that my partner took of me. So I birthed her on my hands and knees, and they passed her through, and I've got a photo of me holding her, crying, because I am in full control of who I am. I'm in full control of my body, and I've just done something that's incredible. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just magical. And then when they handed her to me and put her on my chest, it's that magical feeling that you get after you have a baby. So I could have more and more. No, probably one more. But yeah, no, it was just so much more healing that time round, because I was so fearful from the first experience that it would happen again. But everything went perfectly, and that unconditional love that I then felt for my body, for me, for who I was, but then also for my children, was just amazing, and it stayed with me. And I think because I started these pieces early on in her life, I still had that emotion, and I still had all of those emotions that I had when I was in labour with her. So she's only 11 months. So when we started doing these pieces, she was only quite young. So I still had all of that rawness and I was pouring that into these pieces and the stories that I'm telling. So it's just a great way to connect with who you are.
That's beautiful, thank you. So they're really, that sense is embedded in these works. So I think, like you're saying, for it to be your first exhibition is amazing. And I think that, down the track they're going to be like part of this legacy of your children and yourself and coming into yourself and yourself as an artist. It's beautiful. Rosie, how do you see, or do you see unconditional love playing a role in this work that you're doing as an artist, a curator? Do you use the word influencer? Like, I know that gets used a lot in regards to social media, or do you think that's unnecessary?
Not for myself. I don't call myself that because I can't.
Is it a bit too Western, too white?
Oh, I've been the same. Like, I've been getting emails, dear influencer, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
I think I call myself a content creator.
Oh yeah.
So it doesn't box myself in.
Yeah.
Because I'm not trying to influence people, and I think, look, myself. I'm not going to say everyone, but
yeah.
I'm complicit in capitalism.
Yeah.
In a sense, if you live in under it, you are to an extent. And when I do, makeup looks, like I do have to be like, oh, this is a Fenty lipstick, but I'll always support Rihanna either way. But So I'm not trying to influence people to buy things necessarily. So that's what I'm trying to say. I think I would just call myself a content creator. But
do you know what word I've found that I like to use? I like to use the word creative. I'm a creative.
Yeah.
Because you're creating content.
Yeah.
And you're creating it to please people, but, so you're kind of, in a sense.
It doesn't box yourself in either because it's like, kind of like to do a lot of things all at once. So with unconditional love, like I said, I'm working on internalized BS. So I don't think it's like, I'm not going to say I'm like magically cured of that because that would be a lie. I think it's more so, hello. I think it's more so working towards unconditional love.
Indy's tuning right into what you were saying.
Yeah.
I think, I think I'd like to say that I do have unconditional love for myself because at the end of the day, I do love myself. I have love for myself. But I think that's also, in terms of the concept of my exhibition, it's more about self-acceptance or neutrality and how you feel beautiful. And it's not saying that every day you got to wake up thinking, I'm amazing. Because that's not realistic. It's kind of like you got to ride that wave. But at the end of the day, it's always working towards unconditional love. And I think that's the most important part about it. But it's always working, putting in the work towards that.
I definitely think there's a lifelong processes, aren't they? And, I can't speak about this without speaking as your mum and knowing that the things that I've experienced and the transgenerational traumas that we inherit and experience as Aboriginal women, they do impact your sense of self, how you do or don't love your body, feelings of love and hate that you can have towards and all of that, let alone without the imposition of the West's image making on yourself, when you don't see yourself validated. And when historically, Aboriginal women are described as ugly and slutty and loose and black velvet and all these horrific things that we have to continually fight against. So I see the work that you're doing and all the other, blackfellow creators, non-binary and trans, as well as calling ourselves women as we all identify as in that gendered way. It's very refreshing to find a new way to talk about this, because if we think about our aunties and grandmothers and we think about their soft bodies, and their soft bellies, especially after they've had children, like your body changes. And I would never see their body as ugly or hated, and yet I've felt like that towards myself. And I think I got addicted to dieting and disordered eating as a misdirected way to try to deal with that. So it's taken me a long time to heal, and I know that's something Rosie and I have talked about a lot, and she inspires me and my son too in his self sovereignty, I guess, body sovereignty. What do you think, Maddie? And what do you want to finish our yarn on? Because I think we've got about 7 minutes to go. What would you like to finish on in thinking about yourself and what you want and what kind of future you want for you and your bubbers?
Yeah, I think the same with you, sis. I have my bad days like everyone. I don't accept my body and I'm working on it. And when we talk about unconditional love, it's more about my ability to do something, not so much my appearance. So when I was talking about, my ability, it was my ability to birth, my ability to be strong, my ability to be resilient. But when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't see it. And then I'm trying and I'm working on it because I've got 2 bull eyes and I've got 2 babies that, a boy and a girl, and, that's at the moment their genders that they've been assigned, I guess. And I just want them to feel comfortable in who they are, who they want to be. And, that's why I'm trying to work towards being a supporter of my body and of who I am. So for them and for I've got a younger sister who's 14 and I've got a younger brother. But, kids in that generation think that you have to, be a certain way or look a certain way. And I can remember being that age. And now I look back and I think, you're a nice person. That's all that matters. You're a good friend. That matters. That's what matters. And I really want to instill that in my kids' minds is, well, you're a good person. You've got a kind heart. It doesn't mean anything about what you look like. Someone will like you for who you are. And I really, I'm trying to make myself believe it in myself because I've had lots of people reach out. I'll get on and do a live on Insta without makeup on, and I've had people message me going, thank you so much for doing a live, just as you are. And I say, well, I probably wouldn't get on live otherwise because I barely wear makeup. So it's really nice to have people reach out and say, thank you for being who you are. And I'm really thankful to that as well because that's building my confidence. And I'm not sure, if you feel the same, but those constant conversations you have on Instagram with people, people you don't even know, building those relationships.
It's funny, isn't it? Because sometimes strangers can be more present or even more supportive than people that you know. And it's it's like people that you went to high school with, it's like, they're just like, But then someone from the other side of the world who's never met you is messaging you every day and commenting on all your photos and sharing. And it's really interesting actually how that international community builds and how it really lifts you up. Hey, yeah.
No, I've really enjoyed the space and I feel like it's really positive mostly and it's curated by what you choose to see, what you choose to surround yourself with. So you build your own community on there as well. And as you were saying before, the black businesses have been so supportive. We share each other, we talk to each other. If someone's stuck on something and they don't know how to work, in the westernised space, they can ask someone and we can answer the question. And I think it's really beautiful.
It is.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I felt early today, because it's just been such a busy time, I was really tired, and now I feel really energised by both of you and how generous you've been and the things that you've shared. And I can't wait to see these works, and I really look forward to the ongoing contributions that you're both going to make, because I know that it's going to be long-term, contributions and long-term changes, and this legacy that you're both contributing to so beautifully and with such strength and vulnerability and power and kindness. So, thank you so much. I've really, really appreciated and learnt so much from both of you. And thank you, Yindi. What an amazing panel member she was. Star. And thank you to beautiful Yalaka Wheelam Country for holding us here safe today. These beautiful gum trees around us, and to MPavilion and Melbourne Fringe and these Deadly Fringe stars. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.